So while it can also take away opportunities in some instances, that's not 100%, one side of the fence deal. It also opens up opportunities at certain levels for certain players because of players going up and those schools not being able to find someone equivalent to that is coming down. So they have to take the next best thing, which is the most talented high school player that they can find.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're not accounting for all the players that get into the portal and lose their scholarship, which is a big percentage of people, right? So this is again more opportunity for high school players to take these spots that have become available because guys get into the portal thinking that they're going to get a scholarship elsewhere and not get one. But the idea that, there's going to be less opportunities because of the portal is a myth.
You're listening to the Football Scholarship Podcast, the playbook for parents and athletes who want to secure the best football scholarships possible. From securing a D1 football scholarship in the SEC at Ole Miss at just $500, £700, myself to helping 83% of the athletes I mentor achieve football scholarship offers and 42% going Division I. I've learned countless lessons that I'll be sharing right here with you. Join me and my co-host Brian Overton, who has 15 years of D1 college football recruiting experience, as we interview top experts, successful athletes, and discuss current recruiting trends. Together, we'll help you navigate the recruiting process so you too can achieve your dream of running out of that tunnel in front of 100,000 screaming fans.
What's going on? This is Richie Contartesi and my co-host Brian Overton, and we have a very, very important topic today because the transfer portal is now open, and a lot of the parents that we communicate and get to work with are, concerned about the portal and how it affects high school recruits and the whole 9 yards. And I have posted videos on this, but this is such a pressing topic. It's an important topic, and I get it. Like, if, the new settlement has changed how many roster spots there are. And now there's probably at most programs not going to be walk-ons. So that affects things a lot, right? There's more scholarships available. And then there's the portal. So we're going to be talking all about that. Obviously, as an Ole Miss fan, as you can see here right behind me, as someone who played there, I would urge you to go and watch Lane Kiffin's, and Brian, I'll let you jump into this, but Lane Kiffin's most recent press conference he did on National Signing Day. It was December. You can go to YouTube, type in Lane Kiffin, go watch it on December 4th, I think is the date. And he talks all about high school recruiting and the portal and the direction he believes it's going. And the reason I choose Lane Kiffin is not just because I'm an Ole Miss fan, but it's because he is, as some would say, the portal king, right? And someone who uses the portal a lot, but is also building through high school, right? And has also signed big high school classes the last few years that people don't look at. So I would just take me for it. Go check it out. I think you are going to get a lot of value from it. And it's super insightful behind his mindset of the portal. So, Brian, you've been hearing this a lot, right? I know you work closely with all of the parents that we work with. What are some of the things you're hearing about the portal and how it's affecting high school recruits? And just if you don't know, real quick, Brian has 15 years of Division I college football recruiting experience and literally built the recruiting department the last few years at the University of Arkansas. Actually signed their best class before coming over and working with us and as our head coach. But Brian, what are you hearing about the portal? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I have a different perspective, obviously, because I lived it like when it was born, right? So I was in the business when it first came about, and so I saw the early growing pains, and then what it's turned into now with the culmination of that and NIL combined. So I do have a different perspective, and really a lot of in-depth knowledge on it, and some of the things that I think people need to understand, especially parents and athletes in high school like we work with. Is that, and you made the reference to Ole Miss, but what they need to understand is like every program attacks it differently. Okay, so if you're doing outreach to certain programs, or you're in the phase of your recruitment, specifically seniors, obviously, is who it affects the most. But, and you're talking to schools, just understand that they all approach it differently, right? Like, if I'm using Richie's example of, Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, they like a nice balance of, high school class, a pretty, decent sized high school class. And then they fill specific needs, with portal guys and experienced guys to keep their chances of being, obviously as good as they can be every year, as high as they can. And so that's the way they choose to, attack it. And I'm using high level programs, but I'm just using them as examples. Whereas Colorado, for instance, and Deion Sanders have had an immaculate turnaround, but they go heavy, heavy portal. They only sign high school players that they think can come in and start for them and play for them right away. So they're not going to sign as many. Okay. So everybody treats it much differently. All right. And the other thing I need, you guys to understand is the portal works both ways. And as far as, is it taking spots from high school kids or is it not? So one factor is how each program attacks the portal, what I just talked about, like how committed are they to, or percentage are they committed to high school players versus taking college players to fill their needs. That's the first thing. The second thing is, when you're talking about the non-power fours or, the bigger conferences at the top, even probably you can throw the G5s in there too as well. That the portal works both ways. So what I mean by that is, yes, you're going to get on social media. You're going to see a ton of, power four teams and G5 teams and even some FCS teams offering guys that are in the portal. Well, you got to understand some of those guys are trying to transfer up, but several of them are having to come down because they either can't get on the field where they are, or they were over evaluated to begin with and weren't, probably should have never been there in the first place. So when you're and so when I'm talking about like NAIAs or D2s or, FCS or whatever the case may be, they also have players that played really well and matured over time and got some really good tape who are now able to level up and, in a division, and are leaving those teams. Okay. So what does that do? It opens a roster spot for somebody, right? Well, those lower divisions sometimes cannot get a guy that is, as talented as the guy that left, obviously, or they just simply can't get those guys because of ego or whatever the case may be to commit to coming to a school down there where they are, whether it be NAIA Division II and things like that. So what do they have to do? They have to take the next best thing, which is the best high school player available. So while it can also take away opportunities in some instances, that's not 100%, one side of the fence deal. It also opens up opportunities at certain levels for certain players because of players going up and those schools not being able to find someone equivalent to that is coming down. So they have to take the next best thing, which is the most talented high school player that they can find. And those are the two big sticking points, I think, that I find myself trying to explain, especially, to parents and athletes now in dealing with the transfer portal and just how it works and the effect it has on, signing high school players just in general.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, and look, like I've already made some YouTube videos on this, on how the portal is actually adding more opportunities for high school football players. And that doesn't even include the fact that we're going from 85 to 105 scholarships, right? It's the fact that, Brian, and this is the one thing I'll just add to what you're saying here, and that's the fact that you're not accounting for all the players that get into the portal and lose their scholarship, which is a big percentage of people. There's a lot of players that go into the portal on scholarship and nobody picks them up and they lose their scholarship, right? So this is, again, more opportunity for high school players to take these positions, I guess would be the word, or spots that have become available because guys get into the portal thinking that they're going to get a scholarship elsewhere and not get one. But the idea that, there's going to be less opportunities because of the portal is a myth. It's a myth.
Yeah, and
right?
then
Because
and
the
that
same guys
and
got to
then
leave that come in too.
Yeah, and then in that situation where guys leave and they don't find a home and it does open up one, it goes back to my first point that I was making it depends on how that team handles, the portal. You know what I mean? If a guy leaves and, doesn't get another opportunity, well, now it's up to that program to decide, do we try to fill it with an experienced player, that's already in the portal, or do we take a high school kid? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's just no way to know how every program, handles that situation. They're all different. I've heard them all. Trust me. I've heard
Yeah.
every
Look at
scenario you can think of. I've heard of it.
look at Dabo Sweeney. He won't touch it.
Correct.
So Clemson, Power 4, Division I program won't touch the portal.
No, and they're. I mean, I know people on Division II staff, some really good Division II schools. I know some guys on some really good NAIA programs that those are truly developmental programs. So they're committed to doing it through high school, and that's just how they're going to do it. You know what I mean? So the portal doesn't really affect those guys.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? You'll have every opportunity, and there's a bunch of those, a bunch of them. And so, every guy they lose to the portal on top of the seniors they lose, that's all opportunities for high school kids, because they just believe in being developmental program and developing kids through high school. So again, it's just as much about the philosophy of how, teams attack it as it is, just a true numbers thing. You know what I mean? All right. There's this, they've got this many spots, so they're going to take this many portal guys. You know what I mean? That's not true, when it comes to high school players, because you just have no idea what their strategy is.
Right. Yeah. And that's why I suggest watching that press conference with Lane Kiffin, because his thing was, we want to build. I mean, he sounded like it's probably what Belichick, right? He's coming in. He's going to probably be the same model, which is we want our core team, our culture. We want to build through recruiting, and we supplement, and we want to add to our team through free agency, through the portal. Which,
my philosophy was, I happened to be at, when the portal first came about, I was at FIU. So that was a great example. I had the polar opposite experiences, right? When the portal opened, I was at a smaller, Division I school, group of 5 school, and we were desperately, when it first opened, trying to take, the bigger conference bounce backs, like I said, that couldn't get on the field there, or whatever the case may be. And to be honest with you, it was really hard. We got a handful, and I say a handful of them, but there wasn't a ton. It was more a little bit the other way around. Obviously the guys at the lower levels, NAIA Division II FCS guys were trying to come up, but the fight against getting the right the right guy based on what we left was really hard. It's harder than people think. They think if you're at a place like that, that just the guys that were at the higher levels are coming down. They just want somewhere to play, and they just jump on board, and that's not the case. So we still ended up at FIU taking way more high school guys than we did portal guys, because we just simply couldn't find enough good ones that wanted to come there. They can be good enough guys, but they still got to want to come to the school. People forget that sometimes. It's not, you're not grocery shopping here. You know what I mean? You just don't go pick up the one you like and go pay for it and it's yours. That's not how it works. They have to want to come there too. So at FIU, we ended up taking way more high school kids because of that. Now, then I went on to Arkansas, and after I had, that year under my belt in the portal, well, now I'm at a bigger program, obviously a Power 4 program. Well, now I have access to, for lack of a better term, more groceries, because now I can take,
more money.
Yeah, I've got more money to shop with, and I've got more groceries to choose from, because now I can take other P4 guys that were up there, or I can take the best guys from the lower divisions and come up, which I've told stories about several times, taking some of those guys that were really, really good for us. So people just need to understand there's a lot of moving parts in that thing, and there's no cookie cutter way to say this is how it works, because it is so dependent on how programs choose to utilize it, or whether they do it all. And it can drive you nuts if you're trying to figure it out. And the worst thing you can do, honestly, is just get on social media, and especially, if if it's not really, involving you that much, I tell our guys all the time, just kind of be where your feet are. It's going to work out how it's going to work out, if you do what you're supposed to do. So people can get really entangled in it, but it's just so many moving parts that, you'd be racking your brain if you're trying to think, all right, this is how it is, and it's cookie cutter, because it's just simply not.
Yeah. And the lacks of rules, and now with revenue share and then the NIL, it's crazy, man. It's a
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
interesting time, but I think it's an awesome time. This is a great time.
Yeah.
It makes it
And
more
people
fun,
got
right?
to, yeah. And I mean, people got to understand too now, like, don't be naive enough to think that, it's a haves and have nots. You mentioned the guys that get in and don't find a home. Okay, those guys hop in there for a couple of reasons. One, they didn't get very good advice from somebody. They got really bad, guidance from somebody. That's usually what happens with those guys, especially if they give up a scholarship to get in, thinking they're going to get X, Y, and Z, whether it's a better opportunity in another school or somebody said they're going to get more NIL, whatever the case may be. That's one thing that happens. Um, and the other thing that happens is, they just get flat out asked to leave. Okay, that happens. All right. And then the third thing, is
What do you mean they get asked to leave?
they have a meeting with the head coach at the end of the year, and they just say, "Look, man, you're never going to play here. You need to get in the portal."
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I
That's what you're
mean,
saying.
and so now they know they're not going to play.
Well, because they want
So
that scholarship back. They want that scholarship.
yeah, exactly. So that happens, and then the third thing that happens is, guys, this is a messy business. They already know they already know they have opportunities before they get in. Through I can give you 100 different channels how you can make that happen. But most of the guys that are successful in the pool and do get a lot of opportunities already know they have those on the table before they ever go in there and put their name in there.
Right.
That's the reality of the situation.
Yeah. I think the also, like, yeah, they know. Too
So when you
too
guys are on social media, like, man, he's at a really good program. They're really good. He had a great year, this, that, and other. Why in the world would he leave? He's probably got a good idea. He's going to get a pretty good raise if he gets in there.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's why he's leaving.
Now, are you
Most of
seeing now D2 cats, FCS cats? What is NIL looking like for them?
while they're at those schools, yeah, it's
Yeah,
very
like, are
minimal. When
D2 guys getting NIL or no?
none that I know of. I mean, not like that,
None at all.
unless it's true NIL where they're a really, really good player in that town and a business or somebody has sponsored them. You know what I mean, or
Yeah,
did a deal with
that's
them.
yeah,
Like true NIL, yes. Collective stuff like that, no, because the schools aren't big enough to have collectives anyway. So no, and that's why those guys that are really, really good at those levels, they're gonna definitely jump. You know what I mean? Because you can pay them what most people in the power forward would think is a very, very small amount, which is a ton to them because it's so much more than what they were making there. You know.
right. Yeah, I mean, look, like, one of the things that I've shared is the ability for the players to go get their own NIL, right? Especially at some of these lower levels. Because the opportunity is there. You can get, even in high school, like, not every state, check your state laws, but you can get paid now in high school to play. Like, you should go do that. And it's not that much additional work to go and do that. But back to the portal. It's at the end of the day, like, and so where do you feel the direction of the portal is going to go? Because I'll share my belief and then I'll let you. But I think that the best of the best blue chip high school guys are going to go Power Four. They're going to go to the SEC, the Big Ten, right? Like, that's going to happen. Then there's also, college football is going to be like a minor league type system. I feel like, where the D2s are going to go up, the FCSs are going to go up, and that's going to continue to be a thing, especially with the new settlement and how rev share is going to fit into the mold. It's not bad to get a Division II scholarship go there, get film, and transfer up. Like, that is not a bad move if that's where you're currently playing at this point, if you're a senior in high school. What are your thoughts?
Oh, it's a great idea. I tell our guys all the time, look, guys, if you're playing college football, period, it is such a blessing. I mean, our program is called a 1% Club for a reason, right? Like, less than 1% of guys are going to get an opportunity to play any division, like any division. So if you get a chance to go play college football at one of those other divisions, and you have confidence enough in yourself and you're willing to do the work, and you go get, your body matures and all that stuff, and I've given 100 examples of that, like a ton of them. You know what I mean? I hit on several of them when I was at Arkansas, guys like that. That's absolutely a real thing. But to answer your question, where I think it's going, I eventually think that the coaches are just going to get so worn out with it, and they're probably already to this point, where they're going to probably present something to the effect to the rules committee that it'll go back to the old rule, with the exception of, I think it's going to eventually go to, you get one free shot at it, so you can transfer one time with no penalty. But then if you try to do it again, you got to sit. That's where I think it's going to go eventually. And that'll slow it down tremendously.
But isn't the argument though that, coaches can bounce and leave anytime? Why can't players?
That's always been the argument. You know what I mean? But there's not 13,000 coaches trying to get jobs either.
Right.
It
is crazy.
So that's always going to be the argument from the player side. I get it. You know what I mean? But what they need to do is they need to consult with the NFL too. Is what I brought up when I was a pro liaison at every stop I was at, and they need to wrap them in on how they view it. When it comes down to the evaluation piece and this, that, and other. Because I'm looking at some guys that got in that I was recruiting when I was, at my old school, and we didn't get them. They ended up going somewhere else. But I started recruiting them the first year I was there, and they're going to like their third school in 4 years, or their fourth school in 4 years. Well, that's a huge red flag. Like that is a huge red flag. Because now, is it you or is it the coach? Like, what is it? Like, you know what I mean? Why can't you find anywhere, you know what I mean, that you can get out there and be productive and things like that? You know what I mean? So in the end, it ends up, hurting a good percentage of guys if they just bounce around like that all the time. So the other rule would almost teach them a little bit of, hey, stay where you're at, get better. You know what I mean? And if it just doesn't work out or you're not clicking with the coach, okay, we'll give you one freebie, to try it again, where you won't have to sit. But now, if it starts happening over and over again, now we're going to have to penalize you. So it's just not the Wild West every year.
It's too crazy. So let's talk about, from a high school recruit, like from a strategy standpoint, understanding the portal and like how to get recruited through it, because you need to know this as a high school player so you could choose the right school, right? Because a lot of people think like, oh, well, I'll just go to, the reason I'm bringing this up is this happened to one of our players, where they had an opportunity to go to a Power 4 school on a Division I full ride scholarship, or go to a G5 school on a Division I full ride scholarship. And they chose the G5 school because they'll have a better chance of playing, and then they could transfer if they wanted to. One thing to keep in mind, guys, and if you go to a school and you don't get game film and you don't play, like, you're not going to get another opportunity through the transfer portal. So you need to understand this. Like, in order to be successful in the transfer portal, you got to have a game film, and you can't just like go to a school, not play for a year or two, and then when you transfer, use your high school game film. That's just not going to work. Right, Brian? So like, this is something that people need to understand too, right? So you can make a better decision on where you should go play college football if the goal is to transfer.
Yeah, my take on that is like, if unless you're like NAIA Division II or maybe even FCS or something like that. I don't know that I would really buy into going to a school and the goal is to transfer, unless, you just flat out think that you got overlooked for whatever reason. I'm always the guy that says, go where you're comfortable with the coaches. It's a good fit and just go work your tail off and compete and this, that, and other. And if you get good enough and your tape gets good enough that you're able to have the opportunity to do that, then cross that bridge when you get to it. I'm always going to be on the side of picking the schools for the right reasons, like I said, and then I'm a big go compete guy. Like, get better where you are, go compete. Fight for the job. I don't care what school you're at. And then if it turns out for whatever reason that you need to leave because it's not a good fit anymore, or you play so well, which is a great thing to happen, that you are able now to transfer up, then cross that bridge when you get to it. You know what I mean? I wouldn't, especially in the scenario of that one, P4, G5, whatever the case may be, I think it should have been more of, go wherever you like the school and the coaches and can see yourself going to school there and living there and having a good experience, and then crossing the transfer bridge when you get to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. It's like the transfer, it will just come naturally as like an obvious
Yeah,
next step.
you're putting the cart before the horse, in my opinion. Like, you know what I mean? Don't focus on
Don't you
that.
think it is? But don't you think it is good for people to at least understand that that's how it works and that you can't just like
Absolutely.
expect
Yeah,
your high school
absolutely.
game film? Yeah.
Yeah,
Expecting your
yeah,
high
no,
school
no.
film.
To that point, the point you made about having tape and needing tape to move, yeah, that's absolutely true. That's why I was saying go compete, get better. You know what I mean? Get as good as you can get where you are, because if you don't get out there on the field and you don't have any game tape, it's not going to matter. You're not going to be able to transfer anyway. Well, I mean, you can get in there, but you're not going to get very many looks at all. I told some of our parents yesterday, I said, I see all these guys. I don't know if I feel sorry for them or not, because I don't know what kind of guidance they got, but I see all these guys on X right now posting their practice clips, college practice clips, on X, trying to promote themselves and all this and that. I mean, they're behind the eight ball big time if you got to post your practice clips and things like that and really promote yourself like that in the portal at this point on social media. They're behind the eight ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's going to be a tough sell.
Yeah. Big, real tough.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Practice film is not ideal in this scenario.
No. But if you get in and now you're in and that team's not taking you back, you got to do what you got to do. I get it, but you may should have done a little more research, got a little better guidance. Now I know there are extenuating circumstances sometimes. Look, you just don't, vibe with the coach, or, it may be extenuating circumstances at the school where you have to leave. I'm not saying every situation is the same, but I have been in it long enough to know that most of those guys are doing that because they got some bad advice, and that's a shame.
Yeah. Yeah. When you were at Arkansas, I am just curious, like how did you build your big boards? Like when you had your big boards built, whether it was in arms or on an actual board, like did you have like symbols next to the names that were like high school or transfer? Or how did
Like
you know
who we were going to take?
Yeah, who you're going to offer?
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously you have two boards. You have your recruiting board, and then you have your depth chart, on the other side of your current team. And so about halfway through the season, I would say, I would meet with the head coach, and we would pretty much have nailed down, like, unless you're going to have some surprises. Some guys are going to walk in there at the end of the year and transfer that you didn't know were going to, but we'd have a pretty good idea, like how many scholarships we were going to have, at the end of the year. And so what we would do is I would keep my high school board the same, and I would have a number beside the position of how many of those guys we were taking. And then on the depth chart side, I would leave, say if we're taking say we're taking 2 running backs, that next year total. And we wanted to take one high school kid to develop and one portal kid that could help us right away. I would put one beside the running back, tag just at the top by the position on the high school board. And I would leave that tag blank on the depth chart, and then I would have a portal tag right under it. So it'd be a high school tag, portal tag. So we always knew we were going to try to take one of each at that position, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Was it always like best when it came to the portal? Were you just position based, or were you also best available player?
It depended. It depends, but it was more position based because most people, it's not like the NFL draft. It's more what you need right now to be good next year, to plug needs that you have specifically. Now, if a really good player came along that you weren't planning on taking a portal slot there at that position, and for whatever reason had a relationship with the coach or a previous relationship, you absolutely were going to explore it. You might make it work if it was a game-changing guy. But for the most part, it's position. It's by position. It's what can make your roster as good as it can next year.
What do you think about this guy? What's his name here? Let me just pull it up. This is a little off topic, but dang it, what was his name? It was, I just had it. Oh, Deshaun Womack, 5-star defensive lineman. You ever heard of him?
I do remember his name, yes. LSU?
Oh, okay. Yeah, but he entered the portal and then committed to Ole Miss today. I was just curious.
But he's at LSU, right? He was at LSU?
Yeah. He was at LSU.
Yeah, I do remember the name. I think he came out in 23, like last year. He's a freshman,
I think he was
isn't he?
5-star last year. Yeah.
Yeah. Handle with care is what I'll say there.
I know this is a little off topic, but you're an Arkansas guy and I'm an Ole Miss guy. But I've been seeing all this stuff going around where Arkansas is like the farm team and for Ole Miss, and then Lane Kiffin even retweeted it. I was like, what the hell? Did you see any of that or no?
Yeah. They're getting some good players from over there.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
But
it's because you left. It's because you're not there anymore.
I don't know,
man.
man.
You, bro. They need you, man.
I don't know.
We need you, though. Our parents love you.
Takes a lot of hard work. A lot of hours, a lot of hard work. If you're going to be good at that thing, you got to grind at it, man.
You can't go back, though. We need you here.
Yeah, I don't have any plans on doing that. I'm going to let them try to figure all that out. I'll just talk about it now.
Cool. Well, awesome, guys. Look, the portal is a hot topic, but at the end of the day, you control what's in your control. That's the bottom line of this, right? Even our parents, we hear about this all the time. We get DMs and comments and all that stuff about the portal. And I even made a video. Go to my YouTube and watch a video that I made on this exact topic on the actual number of spots. Like we did to a T the number of spots available now for high school players because of the portal. I'd highly suggest going and watching that video. And I'll probably leave a link in the description below if you're watching this on YouTube, so you can go watch this video. But at the end of the day, it's about what's in your control. What can you control? And what you can control is doing outreach to college coaches, is posting consistently, is marketing yourself, is selling yourself, is pitching yourself properly, telling your story, and doing the quantity and quality of outreach it takes to get in front of more coaches and build relationships with them. That's what's in your control, and that's what you should focus on. Don't worry about X and the portal and guys committing and all this other stuff, because that's not in your control, right? So, Brian, anything you want to add to that before we close out?
No, you nailed it right there. Couldn't say it better.
The process, bro. Cool. All right, Brian. Well, appreciate you stepping away from all the parents to jump on this podcast with me. And if you're here for the first time, we are thankful that you're here and you're listening to the Football Scholarship Podcast. And we look forward to seeing you on the next one. So feel free, if you're on YouTube, to like and consider subscribing if you enjoyed this and got value from this. If you're watching on wherever you listen or watch your podcast, if you could leave a review, that'd be really helpful. And it continues to allow us to come up with topics and ideas that you want to hear from. So thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Football Scholarship Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe and leave us a review. And for more free resources, or if you're interested in working with us, visit gonextplay.com. Until next time.